going on everyone? Craig here from the Speed Shed again, just back for episode 2. It's been a while since we've done the first episode. There's been a few different changes. I'm back in my garage now. That's been facilitated by an interstate move, which is a bit impromptu, but it is what it is. So we're back in Queensland now, which has been nice to get back into the warmer weather instead of the freezing cold in Victoria. But there's been a few changes with the boat and that sort of thing since then as well. So we've got the motor currently out, which you'll see in an upcoming episode. But for this one today, we jump into pulling the motor out. So this sort of carries on from our first video, getting the motor out of the boat. And then, in later episodes, we'll go about pulling it apart and things like that. So, but anyway, let's jump in and hopefully you enjoy it. So first up, we're just going to take out the cold side intake piping, which allows us to remove the intake manifold bolts and disconnect the injector plugs, which means we can take the intake manifold off, and that's the intake side done. One thing I did forget to mention is that the boat's already been pulled apart previously, so it was just put back together temporarily. So most of the bolts are in there, but everything's only sort of hand tight and fittings are hand tight and that, so if it looks like it's coming apart super easy, that's why. I'm going to leave everything on the intake side connected. Just allows easier reinstallation once the motor's going back into the boat. Now just going to remove the coil cover and oil breather lines, which is going to allow us access to disconnect the coil wiring, and then we can remove the actual loom itself from underneath the coil cover and replace the coil cover for storing. Now we'll move over to the hot side. Start by removing the turbo beanie and the wastegate and exhaust. We'll follow that up with the hot side intake piping, as well as the oil feed line for the turbo and the turbo manifold as well.
Let's go.
One thing we do run in a boat is these jackshaft loops here, which just go over the top of the jackshaft there, which is basically just a small tail shaft with a couple of uni joints on the end, and there's usually a cover that goes in here underneath those loops, and that also covers the jackshaft as well. So the idea of those is basically if there is a failure with that shaft, that it's going to protect the driver and the observer from anything flying around. And that jack shaft, all it really does is connect the end of the crank, which drives obviously the boat through the gearbox, so it connects the crank, or the motor if you will, to that V-drive gearbox. Now we're just going to remove the jack shaft here from the end of the crank, as well as the engine mount bolts, and that's going to allow us to lift the motor up out of the boat. And up away she goes. Alright, so that's that episode done. Just thought we'd take you along for the ride while we pull the motor out of the boat, which it's pretty straightforward, but if you haven't seen it before, it could be a little bit interesting. So sometimes we'll do things like that where we'll sort of show you what we're doing, other times we'll just show you after we've done them, but just thought I'd show that while I had the chance to take it out. So like I said, there's been a few different changes since then, but we'll bring you a few of those things in the upcoming episodes. So hopefully you enjoyed it. As usual, hit like and subscribe, and we'll be back next week for some more stuff and try and bring a few more regular updates. Cheers.